Hi, my name is Simon Hedley, known to my clients and partners as a strategic alchemist and an ultimate connector. I'm a chartered accountant who brings together and bridges the worlds of business philosophy, finance, marketing, optimization, ontology, and so much more. Always focused on one thing, the simple idea that can make the difference to people and projects so we can tip the scales in their favor and get them complete. Pause, Stop, Reset is all about the three little words that can make the difference. They have for me and my clients, and I hope they will for you too. During the show, you'll get to learn about my guests' real-life experiences and the insights and lessons they've learned as they've navigated the resets in their personal and business lives, which you'll be able to leverage yourself. So let's start the show. Hello, I'm Simon Hedley, and welcome to this episode of Pause, Stop, Reset. Today I'm joined by the one and only Brian Kurtz. Now, he says himself that he loves direct marketing and believes that marketing isn't everything, it's the only thing, and he should know. He taught direct marketing at Rutgers in 1989, and he sent over 1 billion pieces of mail over the past 20 years. He speaks from experience, having brought a publishing company to 9 figures and beyond, and he's been helping mentor and teach marketing for decades. In fact, he runs the Titans Mastermind. But more than anything, he's somebody dear friends and clients rave about and talk about as one of those good guys. And that's what's so important, I think, in life and business. And I can't wait to speak with him today. So without further ado, Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Simon. And that's a nice introduction. Not too long. I don't like to hear all about myself because I'm here for your audience, and I want to be able to share my experiences, and hopefully something in my 40 plus years of being in marketing and writing and everything that I've done will be helpful in some way to some people who are listening today.
And I think that's what it's all about, right? It's how can we learn and grow and share? And I love that about your bio and what people say about you. And so for people that may not know you and haven't kept up with your research, like who is Brian and what are you focused on today?
So I'm a serial direct marketer. What does that mean? I'm not a serial entrepreneur because the first 34 years of my career, I helped build a company, Boardroom Inc., which was a newsletter publisher, a book publisher, mostly selling through direct mail in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And then we got into the internet and email and all of that. But that's where I cut my teeth. And also, I guess I was there long enough to get some dentures too, but even though I didn't. But it was an amazing ride, amazing adventure. We were a learning organization. And what I mean by that is that everybody in the organization was expected to do a little bit of everything. And we learned from all the consultants and all the experts and the best copywriters who we work with. So it was like just a superstar internally and externally, an assembly of superstars to create great direct mail, great promotions, great products. I mean, we had a newsletter called Bottom Line Personal, which was the largest consumer newsletter in the United States for quite a while. We got to 1 million paid subscribers for a print newsletter. So it was a great ride, and I learned so much being there. It was like I was learning something new every day because of the people we worked with, both inside and outside. So that was my first 34 years. And then, before you turn the recording on, you mentioned Jay Abraham, and he was one of my early mentors. He wrote the foreword to my book, my opus, Overdeliver. And so Jay has always taught me that basically if you've done something, either whether it's big or not, you've done something unique, you've done something that changed the way people think about what you did. And in my case, I didn't invent anything, but I did change the way people looked at lists, the way people looked at marketing, the way people looked at direct marketing, direct response marketing, which is measurable marketing. And Jay's credo is if you've done it, you have a moral responsibility to teach it. And that stays with me every single day, even before I left Boardroom. But in 2015, I decided to leave Boardroom. I was more an intrapreneur at Boardroom. That's an entrepreneur, because it's a learning organization. I had entrepreneurial tendencies, but I wasn't like, obsessed with having my own company, being on my own, because I had the freedom through my mentor, the founder of Boardroom, Marty Edelston, to think freely and to create. So I was an entrepreneur within an entrepreneurial organization, but Marty passed away in 2013. I decided to leave Boardroom. And what did I need to do? I needed to teach what I had done. And the fact that I had 34 years experience, and that's not 1 year's experience for 34 years, that's 34 years of cumulative experience. And there's a big difference, obviously. And so the cumulative experience over 34 years, again, with all the experts, all the testing, all the growth that we had in all media, whether it was direct mail, TV, radio, online with email and display advertising on the internet, I knew that my job was not my job, but my next step was to teach what I had done. And so I launched Titans Marketing. I actually started that in 2014. I was still at Boardroom, and I did a tribute event. Marty died in 2013. And I did a huge tribute event to Marty called the Titans of Direct Response. And I brought together all of the living copywriters, marketers, all the best of the best that I could find that helped Boardroom grow, that were friends of Marty's. Some were even just acquaintances of Marty's, but they were the people that I trusted to build Boardroom and that Marty trusted to build Boardroom. And we did this huge event. And after the event, I said, I'm already halfway there. I mean, I did a VIP day with some of the people who came to the event. And I realized that I could do a mastermind. I could do some teaching. I could get the rights to certain books. And so, in early 2015, the event was September of 2014. And Dan Kennedy, one of the great marketers of all time, said, and he spoke at the event. And he said it was the event of the decade, the decade of, 2000, we'll say 2010 to 2020. And so I left Boardroom in 2015 and I started Titans Marketing. And so for the last 8 years, I've been teaching what I had done. I have an intense mastermind of some of the best direct marketers in the world. I also have another group called Titans Accelerator, which has 250 members at a much lower price, where I can teach. And that's where I think we connected. A couple of the Titans Accelerator members connected with you, Simon, about me.
Yeah.
And maybe Jay did too. But so that group is like the next generation of great direct marketers. And that's my mission. My mission is to educate them through the best speakers on all the new media. I teach in the group, and it's just a wonderful familial atmosphere. And I'm just going forward. And I'm not staying in place either. I am a lifelong learner. I teach, I learn when I teach. And so being a lifelong learner involves, like, I'm in mastermind groups that I pay to be in because I need to bring back to my mastermind groups what's hot. So, I've learned about some new things on TikTok and YouTube that are taking place in the marketing world. I'm not the expert, but I became sort of a quick expert.
Now, Brian, you told me I had to pause you and bring you back. And as you can see, Brian is a font of knowledge. I'm listening happily because, like, most people never actually have met Jay and spent time with him the way you have, let alone your mentor and those other people. And that passion about how we'll do business, I really hear. And that's what we're going to hopefully share a bit of today. But we're going to sort of take you back a bit, okay? If you look back on your life till now, what's been the biggest shifts and resets you've been through personally and in business?
Yeah, so I came up with 3, which always is a good number. And the first one was when I left college, I thought that I was going to be a writer. I was an English major. I was the film critic for my school newspaper, movie critic, and I was also an amateur umpire for baseball. That's American baseball. And so I thought I'd be a writer, an editor, something like that. So my first job was with a publishing company. And then when I interviewed at Boardroom, which was also a publisher, it seemed like a good fit. The job I interviewed for was to be a list manager. And what does that mean? It means that back in 1981, when I was interviewing there, in direct mail, lists were what ruled the day because you had to mail all the other people's response lists to get new customers or subscribers or buyers. And so the job at Boardroom was an in-house list manager. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was going to pay me, $14,000 instead of $9,000 a year. And it looked like an interesting growing company, which it was. So I took the job. And 2 years in, I had a moment, one of those big, shift moments in my career where there was a job that opened up on the editorial side. So I'm kind of in the marketing side in lists. And the job opened up in editorial. I went to Marty Edelston and I said, I'd really like that job. And this was like the quote that was a turnaround in my career. And it was, Brian, I think you have a nose for marketing. You should stay on the marketing side and not go into editorial. As a 23-year-old, I'm certainly don't know what I want to do completely. And so, of course, I took his advice. And I'm glad I took that advice. It was one of those moments that said, I'm not going to pursue a career in editorial. I'll write. I ended up writing a lot later in my career, but it was not going to be that was going to drive me. It was the marketing. So that was the first. The second was as I started managing the lists at Boardroom, there was another moment where, a job opened up that was more broad based in the marketing department. And I realized that knowing lists, meaning knowing your audience, was probably the most important thing in marketing. And I learned that, and I actually teach that now. I have a whole section in my book about the 40-40-20 rule, but I'm not going to get into that today. And so that was the second one where the second, shift and reset, which was not only am I going to be a marketing maven, a direct response marketing maven, I'm going to come at it from the audience and the lists. And that was a big moment in my career. And I became the marketing director. Then I became the executive vice president of marketing. Then I became an entrepreneur running the entire marketing department. So that was a big shift when I went from lists to marketing. And the third was a little more personal, which we could get into if you'd like. And just to say that everything is not, unicorns and rainbows for anybody. Everybody goes through bad days. Everybody goes through shifts that are not that comfortable. Mine happened in 2019 when I had a near fatal stroke. And it was, that was a health issue. But talk about, a shift or a reset when, you almost die. The doctors thought I was going to die. The doctors thought I'd be paralyzed. I was not. And, I was already living my life in the present, so I didn't have to worry about that. It wasn't like an epiphany shift that all of a sudden now I'm going to live because I almost died. But it definitely, it gets to you. And physically, I couldn't do much for a few months. I didn't let myself rest because I said I got to get back to work and teaching and all that. And I realized that I couldn't do it right away. So that was a major thing that, kind of stopped me in my tracks. And it was much more severe than either the torn Achilles tendon I had in 1996, which was a health thing that stopped me for a month. And it was much more than when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2008, which, I had my surgery and I got back in the saddle within a month or 6 weeks. This was a 6-month recovery, and coming out the other end, it helped my writing, it helped my focus. And so, I've had bad days in my life. That was among the worst. So I think I needed to add that as a third.
And I really appreciate, Brian, how you are being sort of calm about it, right? As the story, then that's what happened, and there's a maturity. And I get a sense you've done that in the work. You talk about the present. You sort of, you're already living in the present, right? I think many people out there aren't. Even your focus on caring about the customer, what a revelation for business. But it kind of is out there when people sort of forget all that. Like, I'm just targeting people. You're like, but who, why, what, how are you adding value to them? I mean, like, I really appreciate it. And there is that importance, right? That reminder, it isn't all unicorn and rainbows. We all have good days and bad days. And it's that humanity, I think, that makes it all make sense. Like, I talk a lot about pausing, stopping, and resetting. Which of those do you think is hardest for you? It sounds like, when your mentor said, I recommend you stay here, you said, sort of, obviously I took his advice. Most people never listen to mentors, even when they pay for it.
Right.
So like, but what helps you? And, why do you think you find it hardest to pause, to stop, or reset? Which of those is sort of the hard one for you?
Well, it's interesting because post-stroke, I realized I was going to do more of the same after my stroke that I was doing before. Not just living in the present, but also being a lifelong learner. Because you're going to be learning until you're put in the grave. So why not embrace the learning? Don't think about what you don't know. Think about what you can learn. And it's a big shift. Yeah. And it became and I had that shift already, and it became even bigger after my stroke. Also, when I thought about the other two, when I went from marketing to from an editorial mindset to a marketing mindset, and when I went from lists to marketing, I realized it was all about my mentors. It was all about the people that I stand on the shoulders of. And so, one of the big moments after my stroke, when I was lying in the hospital bed, and I was realizing that I was not dead, and my arms were working, my brain seemed to be working. Although my kids said, before my stroke, my brain wasn't working too well.
Gotta love the kids.
They just joke with me. Yeah, you gotta love my kids, right? So what happened was I realized that I said, what would be my footprint had I died? And I'm not into legacy. Legacy always implies that you're already dead. I'm more into living legacy than dead legacy. But what would have been my footprint? And a couple of things happened during that period. One is I saw the movie before I published my book. So anyway, there was another circumstance. My book, Overdeliver, was due to be released on April 20th or 9th, April 19th, 2019. And I had my stroke on April 20th, 2019.
Oh, wow.
So I realized that, all the interviews I had lined up for Overdeliver and everything I was going to do to promote the book was going to hold for a while. So I had an epiphany that, when launching a book, the book's on a perpetual launch. I'll give people information on it today on this podcast because it's always launching. Yeah. Because it's your book, and and this book is my opus, so it's very much current, even though I published it in 2019, had a stroke the next day. In addition, I also saw the movie before I had the stroke, and before the book was out. I saw the movie Coco, and I don't know if any of your listeners have watched it or you've watched it, but it's a Pixar film, and it talks about the Dia de Muertos, which is a holiday in Mexico, and that's Day of the Dead. And it's basically not to mourn the dead, but to celebrate the dead. And you sort of, remember them for like 2 or 3 days with parties and gatherings and everything. And what I realized when I watched that movie, that I not only had a responsibility to teach what I had learned, but I had to always go back to the people that taught it to me, and especially the dead people, like the greats of direct marketing and copywriting who were no longer with us, even the ones who are with us still, but especially the ones who are no longer with us, because the movie teaches that there's a final death, and the final death is when no one remembers you anymore.
Yeah.
So as long as you're remembered, you're still alive in some way. And so then I realized, so what's my footprint? My footprint was overdeliverbook.com, which was the site where I sold my book, which honors all my mentors. So, or a lot of them anyway. A lot of them wrote endorsements from my book. A lot of them, and some are dead and some are living now. I have resources on the site, amazing resources from people alive and dead who were my mentors, who they get the resources for free just for buying my book. And the resources are worth thousands of dollars. Some of them are priceless because they're no longer in print. So that was a big epiphany, lying in my hospital bed, realizing that my ongoing mission is not just to teach what I had done and teach what I had learned, but to make sure that I footnoted every single mentor every single time I mention them. Because every mention of Gene Schwartz, and I'll do it now, Gene Schwartz, Dick Benson, Gordon Grossman, Clayton Makepeace. These are just great names and mentors who are dead, but now I just mentioned them. So now they're being remembered, right? Or they're being thought about.
Bringing up Clayton, other people. And it's those little breadcrumbs as well that people can listen to this a year, a decade from now and go, who was Clayton? Who was Jay? And they go start Googling. As long as there is an internet or the oral tradition, they can ask somebody and they can find that great knowledge resource. I mean, you've got me not emotional, but slightly on it. And I actually ask you an off-book question. So one of the things I've done 20 years of Tai Chi. I've been 20 years lifelong learning like you have, of 44 now, but really 20 years actively. One thing that happened to me the last 3-4 years, my teachers have passed. And when they passed, their websites went down, their books have gone, because nobody was driving their business system, right? So there's this weird thing where actually it's lovely when the students forget the teachers, but it's also weird when, like, you know, you and I know Jay understands preeminence better than anybody on the planet. And I could talk about preeminence, but I'm not Jay. Does that make sense? So
right.
But I guess I'm asking is that question, like, you know, you know what you've been doing with a mastermind, 20 years, 40 years of marketing, real marketing. And it's, how does that get transferred? Because 200 years from now, you don't want somebody going, as Dale Carnegie says on page 17 of the book, and getting stuck in that ham in the oven world, right? They need to keep moving forward, but also honoring the past. And some people do that really well. I love how you do it. My friend would call you a good mensch, but most don't. And they don't. And like the classic for me was Jim Rohn. Like Jim Rohn's, I reckon even now has been forgotten by most people, even though, you know, the impact Jim had, others had like that. I'm just curious, you know, does it matter? And I get that thing from Coco, like if nobody remembers you, but also I'm being with, truthfully, nobody will remember me 100 years from now. And that'll be okay if the difference gets made. Just curious your thought on that.
Yeah, so I agree with you. If the difference gets made and the contributions that you've made are being used, are being adapted or whatever, you don't need the credit. But to be remembered, I think this is my strategy on it, and I don't know if it's going to work, but I continually, again, footnote every single time I mention these people all the time. And I think the repetition is working to some degree. So how do I know? So I blog every Sunday to a list of about, 15,000 people. I get about close to a 50% open rate. I get a lot of people writing to me, and a lot of them are definitely in their 20s and 30s. So I can't count on the people who are, being born today, whether they'll be thinking about this. But I get, again, it's anecdotal more than anything else, but I get a lot of anecdotes about, Brian, you're always honoring these people, and I want to do the same, and I'm going to honor you, that kind of thing. I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for them. I always say flattery works on some people.
Yeah.
Flattery doesn't work on everyone, but it works on me. But I'm not looking for the flattery. And that's from Mark Ford. Mark Ford, and he's alive. Mark Ford's one of the great copywriters of all time. He gave me that quote. But it's interesting because I'm not saying they want to be like me, but I want them to take that. So the only thing you can do is take it down to the next generation to let them So I've written about Coco. I've written about final death versus always staying alive by being remembered. And I repeat those blogs on a regular basis, on an annual basis or every other year. So it's out in the ether. It's, if you Google me, a lot of my blogs come up. Mm-hmm. A lot of, actually, when I was at Boardroom, you had to Google Brian Kurtz and Boardroom to get anything. Now, at least you can Google Brian Kurtz. And I think the first things that come up are about, there are other Brian Kurtzes, a Brian Kurtz trucking company and a Brian Kurtz whatever. But I think if you Google Brian Kurtz, you'll start getting my books and the stuff that I teach and, my blogs. So that's the first step because, the internet will hopefully live forever as long as the earth is here. And so I don't know if I'm answering the question, but what I'm saying is that the best I can do is to pound in to the brains of the next generation that it's really good to honor your mentors, remember your mentors, don't take credit for stuff that you don't own. That's the bare minimum. Like don't obviously you don't steal or you don't plagiarize and you don't steal intellectual property. But I believe that actually quoting one of your mentors, who's dead, you get credit for the quote without even coming up with it if you give the mentor the credit because no one knew your mentor. So, and it's not about credit, but, why do people take possession of certain things? Like, why do people say, I invented X when I know they didn't?
Yeah.
And it's because of ego. It's because, of other reasons. And
that's the
I
maturity.
just think that perpetuating the teaching lineage and always pounding into the brains of the next generation that this is a good way to be, whether they want to be that way. If they don't want to be that way, they won't follow me. But if they want to be that way, they'll continue to follow me.
100%. And just to use your example, a lot of this call today, Brian, is thanks to a guy called Alex Mandossian. And you've never heard of Alex, I'm sure, but about
he spoke at my mastermind he spoke at my mastermind in May.
Alex, when I first met him, was a completely cool guy. Didn't know me. Had a weird conversation where he was only in town for like a few hours. Got a taxi, went to see him. And a few weeks later, he's like, Simon, become a better receiver. And I'm still working on that one. And often I think those mentor moments, those wise people living things, they're never on Facebook. There wasn't Facebook back then. But they're those things that like you get, I remember it. I remember meeting Roy H. Williams through him, right? If you're listening into the old marketing thing, check out Roy. He's a crazy cool guy.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I think is also interesting, Brian, with the timeline that goes on. And they were going sort of, hopefully you still got time to speak on this recording today with us on the podcast. But often I think, when you started business, people weren't looking just a week ahead. There was this apprenticeship thing. There was, this is your new career. Whereas now people are chopping and changing every 2 minutes, thinking they're marketing. And that is, but that's not really like lifetime value of a customer. And it's crazy when people don't get like lifetime isn't even a decade. It's 20 years, 50 years, 100 years. And they knew that back in the day. And nowadays people are like, if I haven't got an ROI by Friday, I'm killing myself. It's like, that's not a helpful mindset, I don't think.
That's one of the things in my book, Overdeliver, chapter 3 is how paying postage made me a better marketer. I could have titled it How Paying Postage Made Me a Better Person. I don't like to say that too often because then people say, I'm old news, I'm a dinosaur. I'm talking about the good old days of direct mail. But actually, there's some truth to that because knowing that you needed just the discipline of, how to get lifetime value out of direct mail was so much more difficult because you're paying so much more for the marketing. And today, and you waited for results, you had to be patient. Today online, and I'm not saying, look, online marketing is where it's at. Email marketing is the killer app still with everything that's going on with Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, everything. Email is still the killer app, but direct mail was the killer app when I started. And I think that in the online world, it's immediate gratification. And what happens is, and I'll get into a quick marketing thing here, that, people can't wait for results. And you need statistical significance to be able to read results properly. And so that doesn't happen as often. And you get bad results or you roll out on inconclusive results that you think are conclusive, and you lose a lot of money and you lose your business. And so there is something to the fact that, being a little bit more rigorous, being a little bit more patient, and then looking ahead I'm not saying that you have to do 5-year and 10-year plans. I'm not a big fan of that, but I am a big fan of lifetime value. And lifetime could be a week from now. It could be 2 years from now. It could be 5 years from now, and it could be a century from now. And so, I think that I love the way you phrase that, Simon, that, what is a lifetime? And a lifetime is multiple lifetimes, not of your business per se, but of what you put into the world while you were here that lasts. And then you start talking about legacy, which bothers me. But, it's true. We're all going to die. So, I have this little anecdote that I've used in my blog where, I one of the things I did early in my career, I went to the Landmark Forum, which is kind of like
Me too, Brian.
Oh, you did?
This explains it. You're an ontology guy. I did mine the week after 9/11.
Yeah.
I keep it a secret usually, Brian. You understand why?
Yes. Well, but I always say Landmark Forum was est, but they let you go to the bathroom kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, but I thought it was very valuable going there. And I do believe that, that it really gave me a sense of, they teach you that life is empty and meaningless. So what are you going to do while you're here and all of that? And it's really, it is important to get into that ontological stuff, at least a little bit. I wouldn't live by it because I think you can get caught up in it. And then, then you can go into other things, which I won't mention, that can take you down a slippery slope downward. Yeah. But it really is important to kind of, take stock of what's going on around you. None of us are going to live forever. And my Landmark Forum leader had a little bit that he did near the end of the forum. And he said, when you die, people are going to be really sad at your funeral. They're going to be crying. They're going to be saying what a great person you were, what a great contribution you made to society, what a great friend, relative that you were. And you're going to be missed terribly. They'll be crying and wailing. And at the end of the service, somebody in that room is going to turn to someone else and say, I'm hungry. Let's go to Denny's. And that is where it's at. I mean, life goes on without you. So what are you going to do while you're here to make your footprint, and do it while you're here? So you have to be consistent. You have to be congruent and stay in the game. That's why my stroke, putting a pause on everything, was a terrible moment in my life, not because I didn't want to keep going, but I physically couldn't. And that takes its toll when you're a giver and you want to continue to give with no expectation of a return to as many people as possible, which is my mantra. To not be able to do much of anything was horrible. And so, that's why the stroke would have been the biggest shift and reset I had to do. But, I got back on the saddle eventually, and it was important to do so.
So I love where you took us, Brian. As I said, sometimes these conversations, you couldn't make up the dots connecting. And for me, in those dark nights of the soul, as my friend Jamie calls it, I find often books and movies help me through. I'm just curious if any books or movie helped you through your stroke, help you through those pause, stop, reset moments, and how that's been the case.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few movies. As I said, I was a film critic in college, so I've been a movie buff my whole life. It didn't become my vocation, but it's still a love of mine. And if we were on video now, you would see a bunch of movie posters behind me, in addition to some other stuff. But and the three movie posters that you'd be able to see are It's a Wonderful Life, Pulp Fiction, and Midnight Cowboy. Now, those are three very different, diverse films. But I would say It's a Wonderful Life is probably the most important film for me, not only because I did my thesis in college on Frank Capra, the director of that, and how he related to that time frame in the 30s, 40s, and 50s in the United States. Creative culture. But It's a Wonderful Life. What would it be like if you were taken out? Hopefully everybody has seen it, but if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It'll be on during Christmas every single day if you have TV on some station, but you can always get on some movie channel. And it's basically, what would life have been without you in it? And that is the ultimate. Like it talks about, how you connect to as many people as possible. And it's interesting because both before my stroke, I'd say it was probably that movie. And after my stroke, it's still that movie, because what I've done with my life is to connect as much as possible, but it's a different kind of connection. In chapter 10 of Overdeliver, which is titled Playing the Long Game, I start the chapter saying I hate the word networking, because networking implies, having the most Facebook friends, glad handing people and just, accumulating people. That's not what I'm talking about when I talk about networking or connecting. So my thing is contributing and then connecting. So how do you contribute at a deep level with everybody in your life? And it takes time. It took me at least 20 to 30 years to have true connections and what Jay Abraham calls relationship capital.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've heard him talk about relationship capital.
It's how he and I bonded, to be honest, because I've been living in that banking guy. And actually, one of the biggest sadnesses, Brian, he's in America, I'm here, different lives. We were going to launch together the relationship capital firm. And then Jay's basically got busy.
Oh, wow.
I took that on. He went, why don't you do this? I went, sure. And off I went. And I've discovered it's the most beautiful thing in the world, the most complex thing in the world, the most game-changing thing in the world. And I'm still, the thing about teach what you know, I can't even teach it yet, because it's so subtle and so complicated. Yeah, but it's wonderful. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So, and just quickly on relationship capital, it's like I have this quote. I don't think I got it from anybody. I might have gotten it from somebody, and but I can't attribute it. So I'll take it, which is, everything in business and in life. And again, I'm coming from the marketing. I'm coming from the perspective of, marketing isn't everything; it's the only thing. And that doesn't mean that I'm a marketing whore trying to get money out of everybody I meet. But it means that without marketing, you can't get your mission, delivered into the world. And so my phrase is that everything in marketing and in life is not a revenue event, but everything in marketing and in life is a relationship event. And once the internet took hold, and email marketing and things you could do for low price as opposed to direct mail in marketing, all of a sudden that phrase took on a whole new meaning, because it was so inexpensive to do stuff, online, that you could do relationship building. I mean, you look at something like Jeff Walker's product launch formula, and I'm in Jeff Walker's mastermind, a wonderful mastermind. And Jeff Walker teaches, give away your best stuff for free, because you're always going to have more best stuff. And so you couldn't do that in direct mail, really. Yet you could give away some of it. You can give away some of the steak in addition to the sizzle, but you needed to sell because you're paying so much for paper and printing in direct mail. Online, it's in the ether. You can do a lot of organic things in online marketing, and it's what an opportunity to develop, deep relationships before you sell them a thing. And so that was so consistent with, not everything is a revenue event, everything is a relationship event, and building your relationship capital, building your network, building your connections, building your list. Lists are people too, by the way. And so when I address my list, when I blog to them every week, I never call them a list. I call them my online family, because I'm developing a different kind of relationship with them. And just reminding myself every single day when I'm writing to them that they're all people is so important when you're writing to them. So all of this is kind of wrapped up in this relationship capital thing that I've taken, not to another level, but I've put it in my own terms based on what I learned from Jay. Yeah. And it's been one of the core principles of my career and how I market, how I do my marketing, how I sell things. I mean, I sell my masterminds. I sell classic books. I mean, I have 2 books by Gene Schwartz, and I just mentioned his name, so now he's remembered. Breakthrough Advertising and the Brilliance Breakthrough, which were classic books. In fact, Breakthrough Advertising is known as the ultimate in copywriting and human behavior and marketing. And it was written in 1966, and 100% of it is relevant. I've got the exclusive rights because Gene was my mentor, and with his wife, who's still alive. And I sell I've sold over 10,000 books in over 60 countries. That's being remembered.
Yeah.
And then I have these swipe files from two copywriters who are no longer with us, Jim Rutz and Bill Jamie. And that keeps them alive. And I just mentioned their names, so they're being remembered. So that's a big part of my relationship capital, and includes a lot of people who are dead. And those who are dead get shared with those who are alive. And that goes back to what we talked about in terms of, the lessons from Coco and the lessons from my stroke.
Indeed. I'm going to seed a couple of things for your brain, Brian, as sort of a gift back. One of the things I brought Jay was the idea of holographics about a decade ago. And they've had the technology globally to digitally resurrect somebody. It's one of their trademark terms. So literally you can capture, somebody on their best day sharing their optimal performance, and you actually can recreate them on a stage when they're not there.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, most people don't have anything interesting to say, but there are some amazing people with great stuff to say that you almost can have that sort of beyond Kit in Michael Knight Rider. You can actually have that interaction with the mentor, taking in those audio recordings, taking in those videos, and the nuance there, and that's going to be game changing.
I saw one from a guy who was selling the holographic product in holograms, and he did one with Zig Ziglar, who's like a
titan,
a world-renowned speaker, and he did. I mean, I was at an event, and he brought up a hologram of the guy who was selling it as the interviewer, with a hologram of Zig Ziglar asking him questions, and of course, the answers were they were planted.
Yeah, pre-planned. Yeah,
it was really cool.
But it really feeds where we're going with the tech. I mean, so one question while we have your brain here, Brian, what is marketing? Like, from your perspective, what is marketing? Sounds like an obvious question, right? But what is it when you say it?
Yeah, Dan Sullivan, who runs Strategic Coach, he's the top coach for entrepreneurs in the world, has a definition which I wish I had memorized. Joe Polish, another good friend in marketing, always quotes it because he can just take quotes, put them in his brain, and repeat them. But it's basically creating a situation, or a situation where you have someone who is you prepare, who's ready to hear your message, who is and by that I'm talking about warming them up and romancing them too. That's what we do online, but ready to hear your message and be able to present to them when they can hear it. And that's different than just selling. Selling is important in the marketing lexicon, in the marketing world, but it's not just marketing. Is not just selling. Marketing is preparing the table. It's preparing the meal, and not just serving the meal and eating the meal. And so that's the way I look at it as an analogy. And it's basically a way to romance your buyers, romance your prospects, romance your audience to just want to be with you, whether online or offline. And if they want to buy something from you, you make it as easy as possible for them to do that. And you don't just sell them, you follow through. You go and in my book, Overdeliver, I think chapter 7 is customer service and fulfillment, which are marketing functions, to fulfill an order, to service an order. And that goes back. And then the next chapter is lifetime value and continuity. So I followed through in my book from, doing the 3 legs of marketing, which are, the audience or the list and the online family, to the offer that you make, to the creative. That's chapters 4, 5, 6. And then chapter 7 or 8 is customer service and fulfillment. Well, actually, no, chapter 7, I think, is multi-channel marketing. So you're not in one channel. Chapter 8 is customer service and fulfillment, so that that they're marketing functions. And chapter 9 is lifetime value and continuity. So it's not just marketing for yesterday and today, it's marketing for tomorrow as well. And so that's what I think of marketing. It's not just one selling event. It's the continuum of, and again, it goes back to your relationship capital. It goes back to your online and offline families, not just, which is your list, which is the most important asset. I knew more companies in direct response marketing, which is, again, measurable marketing, where the thing that when they sold their companies, the number one asset was their list.
Yeah.
Because if it was a good list of multi-buyers and people who love buying from the company, it was worth a lot more than other companies who had a list of just names and addresses, and they weren't cultivated names, they weren't relationship names. So to me, I mean, I'm putting a little bit more on the term marketing than probably most people do, but when you look at marketing like that, you can see how it includes, like, when I talked about my open rates on my blog posts, that's not the most convincing feature. It's the engagement level, and I encourage people to engage with me through email. When I send my blog out on Sunday, I encourage them to email me. And I respond to every email, maybe not immediately if I get, 50 or 75 emails, but I will respond to every single one, even with an acknowledgement, and tell them, thanks for being part of my online family, a personal email, not an automated response, because that's part of the engagement process. And that's part of marketing. So again, to differentiate, and also I think marketing involves two words that I brought up earlier: consistency and content. And consistency, three words, 3 C's: consistency, continuity, and congruence. Consistency, continuity, and congruence. Consistent messages. Don't send out a blog post and then send out your next one a year later or a month later. Be consistent. Send out valuable information on a regular basis. Some online marketers do it daily without selling every time. Some do it daily and sell every time. I do it weekly and don't sell every time. I sell in my PS, as my blog is all content. That's the way I do it. So that's consistency, continuity, ongoing. Keep it up. Talk about your past blogs. Refer to them in the current blog. Talk about an ongoing blog that you're thinking about writing. Keep it and then congruent. The fact that I talk about, like, not taking affiliate commissions when I sell something in my blog, I give people a discount that no one else can give them because I'm not taking the affiliate commission, and I pass it on to my list. That's something I do. It makes me less rich in money, but it makes me more rich in terms of being able to give the best possible deal of anything that I'm an affiliate for. And I'm only an affiliate for things that I believe in, that are education and marketing. And if they're educational, then I can afford to not take an affiliate commission, pass that along to my list, so they become smarter and they remember that I'm for them. And that's about, again, that's marketing. That's my kind of marketing. I'm not saying everybody should do it that way. I leave a lot of money on the table, but it's not important to me as important as the riches that I get in terms of, the relationship capital I develop with my online and offline family.
Just the stand you're being, by the way, I'm so glad we're talking, because often you never know till you sort of get to this point. And I won't mention his name. He was an Infusionsoft Marketer of the Year many years ago, back when Infusionsoft was the go-to tool. And I remember him saying very groundedly, people just walking wallets. And he really meant it. He didn't care. Like, if they bought a product from him, whether they got results wasn't of concern. Now, he made his 7 figures. He was good at doing that bit. But that's not the people you went and talked about, Joe and Dean and other guys that live and breathe this.
Exactly.
And it's so refreshing. And part of I don't like the word frustration. I'm in the UK, Brian, right? We don't get the guys that really get it, because the whole of the UK marketing is quite a small country compared to people that are marketing across the States, right? It's a different game, let alone those doing global marketing. And it's a very different industry where you can, pitch 100 people in London and that's the entire market, than when you've actually got to deal with a huge world that's out there at the macro scale. And I'm very glad people are waking up a lot. And you mentioned, this consistency, continuity, and congruency there. in the old days, it was easy to get on a sort of a physical list and hard to get off them. Nowadays, you can get on an email list and off a list in seconds. We've been around the buying, selling of companies before. People buy a database, in essence, the customer database, 1 million customers, and they burn it in 3 months.
Yes.
Because they don't care about the customers. They forget that nuance of the, it's like, well, the emails are kind of the same. The AI robot split tested that email. It's a great email. No. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I would also add that, going back to customer service and fulfillment, when I wrote a blog recently about a book that we sold on TV and infomercials when I was at Boardroom, and it was like the single best successful campaign of my career over 3 years. We probably did between $250 and $300 million in the sales of the book on TV, plus all the ancillary sales online and in direct mail. And the thing I was most proud of was the fact that the return rates on the book were always single digits and sometimes under 5%. And so the guy from Infusionsoft that's talking about just making money, they can live with a 30% return rate because that will still make them money, and they don't care about results. They don't care about the customer. And, it's one way to sell. It's legitimate, but it does make the marketing landscape a little uglier for the people that are doing it the way we're talking about. Yeah. And that's just a fact of life. I mean, I think that, there'll always be those people, but I think that being a stand for, really being a stand for the customer, being a stand for delivering value all the time is something that, I believe in, and the people that I hang out with believe in. And that's why I don't just add people to my online family indiscriminately. People get on the list, of course, from one way or another. But I want people to hear what I have to say. So if people come onto my list from this podcast, those are the people I want in my online family, because they've heard me and they know what my philosophy is when they're getting into a relationship with me. And look, a weekly blog is a relationship. It's not just a weekly blog. So am I 100% congruent, consistent, and what was my third? With all continuity? No, I mean, I'm sure I step out of bounds once in a while, but when I do and I get called on it, I backpedal. And I you need people to let you know. And I've got those people either on my list or people who, give me feedback. And that's what you need too. You need feedback loops all the time that tell you when you're going outside of your mission or outside of where you want to be. And I've spoken in Europe numerous times, never spoke in the UK. I was going to do something in Wales a few years ago before the pandemic, and then it got shut down. So if you have any opportunities,
we do, Brian. We'll get you over 100%.
I would love to speak in the UK. Yeah. No language barrier, although I don't speak, UK English or Australian, but I've spoken in France, I've spoken in Hungary, I've spoken in the Netherlands, I've spoken in Germany, and I know that this message with people, Hungary was incredibly interesting because, I came there as the ugly American. They thought, here's an American who talks about marketing being the only thing. So they're sitting on their hands waiting for me to talk about, sell, sell, sell. And I talked about congruency in marketing, and you can dial it up or dial it down any way you want. And by the end, I think that they realize that, that marketing isn't everything. It's the only thing. And marketing is not evil either. And so we started this whole section of this interview with how do I define marketing? But imagine defining marketing and differentiating it from selling, like I've done a little bit here, to people in Hungary who were under communist rule, I think, until 1989. They're not where we are in the UK and certainly not in the US. And so, but what I do believe is this. I'm not the ugly American saying the way we do it in America is the best way. However, without bragging or boasting, and it's not bragging if it's true, as far as marketing goes, and especially direct response marketing, United States is, so far ahead of any other country in the world. It's not even close. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just stating it as a fact. And the people in other countries who have joined masterminds, and I have proof of it, of people who like join my mastermind or join Jeff Walker's mastermind or join Joe Polish's mastermind from other countries, have been able to go back to their country and in their own language share what they learned in the US and taken their country up a few notches.
Yep.
And that's what I want to do. I don't want to brag about how great the United States is in marketing. I want to share it internationally with as many people who want to listen, and then take and have a messenger there. There's a guy in Hungary, Attila Prangerjuaz, who is, sending the message. There's Sebastian Knight in France, the French marketer who's taking it to France. There's a guy in Holland who is an awesome marketer but one of the things they have in common is that they all speak very fluent English. So they were able to come to the States and absorb and go back. And I think that's a prescription for global marketing at the highest level.
Yeah, it's one of the things, Brian, I'm most grateful for now, after 20 years of this, being taken out to the States and being introduced to Jay, Bernie Dorman, kind of people that nobody really knew what they were up to, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then you get to come across meeting Jeff Walker's brother over 12 years ago with Mike.
John is terrific. He's terrific.
Yeah. But it was, and then watching them build these behemoths, watching Brendan Burchard, watching Frank.
Right.
And Ryan, and it's like, and I just know, because I'm a weird banking guy in my background, they're just getting started. And it's those kids today that were like 10 and 12 going, hey, how do I market this? What's marketing? And they're consuming it and playing with it. And it's mind boggling. One of the guys I met on a plane from Dubai, flying to Vegas to see Grant and people there, he had over 1 billion YouTube views. Now, saying earlier, Brian, 1 billion bits of mail, that was expensive. It didn't cost him anything. He just put it on YouTube, and then it went a bit viral. He's a clever guy, but it's a fascinating world. We are going to have to go into a different phase here just to wrap up. And I've appreciated it, Brian. This is my first time interacting in this way with you, and I get now why people like you the way they do.
Oh, thank you, Simon. I appreciate that.
I love that ontology reminder as well, and you've got me thinking about a lot. But one of the things I want to get from your wizardry brain, what's the one takeaway that you want people left with tomorrow? Like they're going, I heard that podcast and Brian said that. What's that one takeaway you want to be left with?
I guess, a couple of things that I've already said. So I think if you walk into a room, a couple of things. This I learned from Lee Richter. Go into a room and without wanting anything. And what I mean by that, you want to learn. So it's not that, but not looking for the edge, not looking for a client, not looking to make money, at least initially. I mean, when you join a mastermind, people join my mastermind. Ultimately, I'm not naive. They want to make money. They're paying money. They're paying me a lot of money, and they want to make money. They will get there if they go about it in the right way. That's always been my way. So how do you do that? You've got to be a lifelong learner. You've got to go into a room not expecting anything. You've got to go into a room contributing 100% of your genius and sharing freely with no expectation of a return from anybody in the room. And the fact is, and this is only based on, 40 plus years of experience, so take it for what it's worth. With that attitude, I've gotten so much more. So I don't go in expecting anything, and I get so much more. Now, would I get more on a superficial level that if I went in expecting something and expecting, to get something out of every room that I walk into? Maybe, but it wouldn't be worth it to me, because the way the process that I take to get there is so much more fulfilling and rewarding, because I'm learning while I'm possibly making money, and while I'm possibly, getting a speaker for my mastermind, where I'm possibly but I don't look for it. But if it pops up in the room, I say, oh, maybe I should ask. Now, the other piece of that, and this is really important, you never want to make an ask from nowhere. Like I get people on my list, people I don't know, people who are just getting my blog, and they send me a long email expecting me to coach them immediately. Can you give me a call? All of that. I mean, that is an ask from nowhere. And I hate saying,
give me a call. Like, who are you? What do you want?
Exactly. It's like, and I don't want to play the stuck up, arrogant entrepreneur, but like, look, I don't sell them. You don't know how busy I am. You don't know that people pay me $2,000 an hour for consulting. If I play that card, then they just think of me as an arrogant prick. So I have to be nice about it, but I say I don't have the bandwidth to do that. But actually, if you join my Titans Accelerator Mastermind for $2,000 a year, you'll have me on up to, 30 calls, live calls a year, and then the recordings. So you can interact with me on the calls with a bunch of other people, of course, do a hot seat with me on a call. And so I have an alternative for them, but they came with an ask from nowhere. So I did a blog post, never make an ask from nowhere. And how you do that is developing relationships that go a mile deep so that when you end up asking for something, it's not from nowhere, it's from somewhere. And so I've made some asks from almost nowhere, but it was based on the fact that I'm in a mastermind with someone. I've interacted with them a few times on a deep level, but I don't have a long-term relationship. And I asked them to speak at my mastermind. That would be the closest I come to making an ask from nowhere. But it's from a little bit of somewhere. But when I usually ask somebody to speak at my mastermind, to sell one of my products, which I don't do very often, to promote breakthrough advertising to their list, which I don't do very often, I usually do it with the guarantee that they're going to say yes, because I've done a lot of things for them, is one way. And also I have a deep relationship with them. They may still say no, but in that case, if I've made an ask from somewhere and they still say no, I'm okay with that, because it's just their choice and I wasn't expecting it. So again, go into every relationship, every ask, not from nowhere, expect nothing in return, be 100% zero as opposed to looking for some quid pro quo in everything you do. And the ultimate result is going to be you'll get a lot more rewarding and fulfilling lifetime, I believe, doing it that way.
Yeah, and just to underline, when you ask, it's actually asking. It's like, do you want to do this? And they can say no, as opposed to,
right,
if you don't, you're not my friend anymore. That's not really asking.
That's an ask with a huge expectation. And the worst thing you can do, my mom just died recently. She was 97.
So sorry.
And the mistake that she made through her entire life was unrealistic expectations. So if she expected me to call her 5 times a week and I called 2, then I was a failure. I'm not saying we had a good relationship and I miss her terribly already, but that was just typical of how she looked at her life. Her expectations were never really fulfilled, and you don't get as much joy in life that way. And I always wanted her to have more joy. So the idea of unrealized expectations is where you cut away and chip away at your joy, I think.
100%, Brian. People, I'm sure, want to connect with you. You've mentioned a few websites. What's the best way for somebody to learn more about you, what you're doing, and connect if they choose to? Is that through your online blog?
I think the best way is they go to briankurtz.net, BrianKurtz.net. The opening page on that modest site. Well, it's not that modest. It's a good site. It's got all my past blogs going back to 2014. But the first page is an opt-in to get another interview of the 3 biggest successes of my career. I've touched on a couple of them even in this interview. The infomercial and being able to build a list that is powerful as opposed to a list that's just names and addresses or names and emails. So I think that going to briankurtz.net is the best way, easiest way, and it's a free way. Plus, there's a lot of free content. However, and I'm not selling here because I don't make any money on this, but if they go to overdeliverbook.com, OVERDELIVER book.com, they go to the site where you can buy my book, and you can buy it on Amazon off that site, or Barnes & Noble. There's a click to go off the site to go buy it. The window's open, you come back to the site, you punch in your order number from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any other, there's a third book site on there as well. And what you get to access there are 11 incredible bonuses. And again, overdeliverbook.com was the site that I realized is going to be my footprint as long as the internet is alive. Because all I have to do is have someone, keep the URL alive on GoDaddy, and the site will be alive. And the bonuses on that site are just incredible. It's, in fact, I have, I think, 19 keynote speeches that Jay Abraham has given, plus a course that Jay used to deliver, How to Get Where You Want to Go, which he spent a couple $100,000 to create. He doesn't sell it anymore, and it's all on there for the taking, plus 2 PDFs of 2 books that are not in print from 2 of my mentors, Dick Benson and Gordon Grossman, who I mentioned during this call, who are my heroes in direct mail. And what they talk about is very much relevant to everything that we do in online marketing. There's a swipe file from Dan Kennedy. There's a swipe file that I put together with a friend of mine, which goes back to 1900.
Wow.
And don't think you can't learn from swipes from from the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Oh, they're the best.
There's just great stuff on the site, all free for buying my book. My book is, $27. I don't make money on it because I got an advance that I haven't earned out yet. So it's not a moneymaker for me, but it's an opportunity. And you get into my online family and get my blog. So you get everything you get if you go to briankurtz.net. But if you want to spend $27 on my book and get thousands of dollars worth of resources and bonuses, go to overdeliverbook.com. A much better way to connect with me and connect with all of my mentors at the same time.
I love it. And if you do buy the book, please read the book. We have a thing, Brian, called Author Marketing Group. Love to gift you lifetime membership. You're already part of the family here. This is the thing. Getting the book is the first step, then read it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And if you want to get the Kindle version and the audio version count as buying the book to get all the resources. So
that's fabulous, Brian. Honestly, it's an absolute pleasure. At some point, we need to get some lunch either here or Maui and actually spend a bit more time, because this is where it gets fun. And it is this mission of, I think, helping get those hands up, right? Not the hand out. Getting people on that ladder of getting into business, making their first $1, their first 1,000, their first million, and helping people. And it is this really fun game where, and I think that one you haven't really touched on, just sort of to add back to the story and add back to you, what I think happens, Brian, when you get the good marketers, the great marketers, people like Dean and Joe, at a certain point, the doors start opening that they never knew could be opened. And that's the world that's like really fun and mind-boggling. It's like, oh, there's somebody with 100 million person email list that wants to mail my offer. How did that happen? And that doesn't happen if you're scamming people and ripping them off and not caring. It cares because eventually the right people notice. And it's a very small world out there.
Yeah, Joe has a new book coming out, and it's called What's in It for Them. Perfect title for a book from Joe Polish.
Well, I'd love to get Joe on here one day, but he's a busy monkey, busy guy.
He is. I'm sure he's in my mastermind, and I'm in Genius Network. So, and I've known Joe for over 20 years, and I knew him when he was the king of the carpet cleaners. And what he did then and what he's doing now is just the same thing, but in a mammoth way.
Yeah.
He's one of my heroes.
No, completely. And if ever you find people that you think would get value from being on the show, let us know. We'll fast track them in. But honestly, Brian, it's absolute joy today. I really appreciate sort of you being with us, spending the time you have, investing it with us. And we're going to keep remembering Brian Kurtz, Overdeliver, keywords. But more than that, the reminder about being the stand you are for real marketing, not just, hit and pray. And also this reminder to really step into being that lifelong learner. We talk about being the lab of life, Brian. It's a big world to learn and grow and share, right? With friends on that journey. and honoring and remembering our mentors even more. That is so vital, so vital. And that one I hadn't heard before, but I love how you said it. After your funeral, Simon, someone's going to say, I'm hungry, let's go to Denny's. Right?
Yes.
It's going to happen. Brian, anything else you want to wrap up with before we end the recording? Anything you want to leave them with?
No. It was a pleasure meeting you. This was you were prepared. You knew enough about me to be dangerous. I knew enough about you to be dangerous. Dangerous being a positive word in that respect. And, I just think we have to keep the dialogue going. And I'll keep it going as long as I've got a breath in me. And I think you will too.
Me too.
And I do hope we get together at some point. And again, I would love, if you have any connections in the UK, it's the place where I've been. Of course, I've been to London and environs, but I've never spoken there. And I think that if my message would resonate in the UK, that would be a place that it's funny because I've been to countries that are a little more quote unquote exotic than the UK. But I would love to speak there one day.
100%, Brian. And part of the fun, by the way, part of my fascination, I've been living in this sort of strategic alchemy, the joint venture company sort of context, right? So I know even like in one of Jay's fingernails, he's got 50 people that could get you in front of 1,000 people in London any day of the week, let alone people like Steve and others and Dean and Joe. I think the reality is getting the right audience for the right message on the right day. But happy to do that. And again, no money required, because the truth of it is at a certain point you can pay for coffee that day. And then the only thing is like, well, what's actually helpful, right? And
yeah, exactly.
And that's where it gets fun. So if you've enjoyed today's show, please make sure you subscribe to go check out Brian's website. That's briankurtz.net and the overdeliverbook.com. And if you really get stuck, check out the charity. We'll even buy you the book for Brian if we can, for a few of you. I can't buy a billing copy of your book yet, Brian, but work on that. But head to Apple Podcast, make sure you're subscribed, give us 5 stars, make a comment on what you've heard and take action on. And again, Brian, absolute joy today. Thank you for being with us for Pause, Stop, Reset.
Thanks, Simon.
Once again, I'm Simon Hedley. Thank you for listening to this episode of Pause, Stop, Reset, which is brought to you by the team at simonx.com and published by thesimpleidea.com. So you get maximum value, and to access all the bonuses and gifts, make sure to head to pause.reset.com, register and explore the portal. And if you're looking for great people, check out onesmartnetwork.com. If you've enjoyed the show, do give us a positive review, subscribe, and share this episode with friends. I can't wait to share our next episode with you. Till then, remember you can always choose to pause, stop, reset.